with that said, I think I will hand over to Judith. Thank you again on behalf of myself and all of us here tonight. We're really looking forward to an interesting talk.
Well, thank you very much, Angela, for the invitation to talk to you all. And a good warm hello to everyone, wherever you are, the friends of the Society. So let's go on an adventure this evening. I'm a Scot born in Australia that lives in Italy. So I've lived in a very beautiful garden in Scotland, a little pompous, with two very beautiful glass houses. I've lived in Australia with a mango grove. And in the last 40 years, I've lived in Italy, where I've spent my life looking after Italian gardens. Now, what does that mean? I'm not a gardener. I'm not a garden historian. I realized that when I was in 1972 in Florence, it was difficult getting into gardens. It's always been my hobby. You know, I love visiting gardens. And I used to walk all the way up to the Gambarai or get a bus and go up to Sitignano, and you'd find a little piece of paper saying, sorry, we only open every third Tuesday if we're not on holiday. And I thought that was rather, you know, not a very good way of advertising visiting gardens. It was practically impossible. You never got any type of help, very few gardening tours and things like that once you got there. Hardly any books. Internet wasn't around. So I decided that why didn't I set up a network so that it would be easier for people like me, you know, just to be able to see them. Because I think a form of culture is always information, isn't it, from the start? You need to have access to information, to notions, to study, to research. And the fact that a lot of these gardens were closed to the public made it difficult. So I just opened a telephone book and called my first potential client, because I didn't set up an association, because at the time, everybody said very nicely, very politely, you're completely mad. The Italians aren't interested in gardens. And I used to reply, that's not true. They can't get in, they can't see them. So with very little capital, at the time, we used to say we didn't have enough money. I just made the first phone call and called an industrialist called Giannino Mazzotto, who had a beautiful garden in the Venetian area with over 120 statues by Orazio Marinari. So I said, oh, can I come and see you? I've got an idea. I'd like to set up a network to promote the knowledge of Italian gardens. I turned up and I found a man with an enormous cigar. He said, do you want to have a look at the garden? I'd driven 3 hours all the way up and I said, well, wouldn't mind if you've got time. He popped me into his Ferrari and we went round the garden at over 150 miles an hour. So I saw all the statues one after another. And when I got off, you know, I thought he was mad, not me. And he said, no, I'll back you. I'll become part of this scheme if you just promise that you won't go public, that you won't have public intervention. I said, don't worry. The Italian state, you know, is not particularly interested, hasn't got enough money and hasn't got the consensus to invest much in culture. So I feel quite happy at promising you this. So that was my first contact with an Italian garden owner. So that's what I'm going to share with you today. What is behind the Italian garden? So Grandi Giardini Italiani, Great Italian Gardens, is made up of 143 gardens in 13 different regions. And apart from COVID, we have over 8 million visitors a year. All the tickets we get from the visitors go directly to the gardens. Then we do more than 700 events a year, obviously not this year or last year, but we will be back on, I'm sure, quite quickly back on course, on good course. So behind all this, I've got 3 types of garden owners. One is the Italian state. Okay, so I go and meet regularly people who run the Reggio di Caserta or other state-owned, or a lot of the gardens belong to provinces or local town halls or private owners. More than 80% of the gardens in Italy don't belong to the state. It's only 4 or 5 of the big gardens that belong to the state. They're state-owned. And just to give you an idea of the difference, La Rete di Caserta, which is one of the finest gardens in Italy, down by Naples, Caserta, that was built by Vanvitelli, father and son, which I find is quite an extraordinary garden. I absolutely love it. Has 550,000 visitors. Versailles has 8 million. So, of course, the Italians do run their gardens, but the Italian state tends to run it, in a rather offhandish way. They're not very marketing orientated. I don't know if that's a good thing or it's a bad thing, but that's the state of the things at the moment. Then I work for private garden owners. And so a lot of them are industrialists. A lot of them are noble families that have inherited it. So my assistant in the office, because we have a proper office on Lake Como, in the home that belonged to Lucchino Visconti, the beautiful park on Lake Como, and all my staff, it's a little company, you see, so they're fully hired. And the first days they used to talk to my clients, that's what the garden owners are called, they were afraid and came up to me and said, how do I have to call the princess? How do I have to call the duke? And I said, no, get off that stuff. We're just talking about gardens. They're our clients. Just call them Mr. and Mrs. Okay, so let's get that straight. But of course, some of these families, they don't even want the gardens because they've inherited it. As I've been working for them for 25 years, I've also got to know the new generations. And some of them, when their grandfather or grandmother or fathers die, they always call me up and say, now what have I got to do with it? So I always reply, this is my type of relationship with them. Do you want to sell it? No, I can't sell it. Okay, so don't moan and groan. Let's get on with it. Let's see what you have to do. So my relationship with them is basically I get them down to work. So when I go and meet these families, they say, we need money to keep up the fountains, to keep our gardeners, but it's so desperately difficult. And I said, no, it's very, very easy. It means you have to get up at 7:30 in the morning. You have to get into the office. You have to reply to emails. You have to be there so that people can get information from you. You have to be there and meet your gardeners. Then a Contessa said to me 5 times, I went to lunch with her, magnificent lunches in these beautiful palaces. And she said, dear Judith, I can't find any gardeners anymore. Then we got to the second course. And again, she said, did I tell you I can't find gardeners? By the time we got to the dessert, I looked around and said to her, have you tried paying them? Because they have these funny relationships with anybody who works in their gardens. They think they should be happy and proud to work in their gardens, and they don't actually need to be paid. So one of my revolutions was saying to these people, if you pay peanuts, you get apes. If you pay proper wages, you'll get proper gardeners. You'll get people who want to be dedicated to that garden. You'll get head gardeners again. And of course, you probably get better plants if you're not, if you look around properly. So I'm very proud to say after 25 years, when I go to Holland, I don't actually pay my hotel and I don't actually pay for the blue car that picks us up, because we are the biggest buyers in Europe for plants now. Okay, we're now getting all sorts of people back into our gardens, which means people who are specialists on lemon trees and pine trees. And it's such fun because all sorts of expertise are coming, bringing the gardens back to life. So my relationship with the garden owners, we don't fight the whole time, but I'm certainly not a yes man, okay? And I put them one against the other. They always say, oh yes, well, of course that garden's beautiful because they've got so much money. And then I go and say, yes, but he's investing his money in it. You're not. You're investing a lot of your money in other things. You must reinvest in what you have inherited. So I'm pleased to say that out of 143 gardens after 25 years, we now only have one garden that is in economical difficulties. All the others, all they're getting their money through visitors, you know, like us who walk in and pay a ticket, through events, some of the finest weddings in the world. I'm not saying in Italy, but in the world, we have big Indian weddings in our gardens, people who fly over from all over the world. Or companies, for instance, Zuckerberg turned up and wanted to take over some of our gardens for 15 days. And when I asked him, have you got a budget? He said, no, talk to my secretary, but I told her to fill in any price. I must say, I took advantage of him. We asked him for an enormous amount of money. So there's only one garden that's in difficulty, but because I can't change their mentality. They live on the property and they're 85 and I can't change their mentality. But all the other ones, we have this type of relationship. A person I met at the beginning of my adventure was Cicogna Mozzoni. It's near Varese. It's up in the north of Italy. It's a hunting lodge. It was built in the 1500s. It has the most beautiful of frescoes, and something fascinating for you of the Mediterranean society, because all the plants that are painted in the frescoes tell us what type of plants were available in 1548. So it's a document. It's not only a beautiful picture. And this belonged to a Bohemian princess who'd married an Italian count. She spoke 5 languages, and when I met her, she was had just become a widow. And she didn't want to give over to inheritance taxes this marvelous property, a beautiful garden with an Italian style parterre, a catena d'acqua, which is stairs that come down the middle of a fountain. There's a famous one in Colodi, there's another one in Bagnaia. It was a typical work of art that you had in Italian gardens in the Renaissance period. And she didn't want to give it up. And the banks were on her back, and she had 4 children. So she put one at the till for the tickets. And if you go to Cicogna Mozzoni, be very careful, because the boy in the pigtail is actually the owner of the place. Then we've got another boy in the garden, and she was a super person, spoke 6 languages, I think, and full of life. And she got in contact with all the gardening schools in Europe and said, look, send your students to stay with me. I'll teach them to garden with my gardener. And in 4 or 5 years, the whole thing came back to life, but full of youngsters. They don't actually need them anymore, but they still put up youngsters. And really, it's like staying in a five-star hotel. I mean, you know, can you imagine a room when you're staying in that palace? It's, you know, bigger than my flat. Okay, the bathroom is a little far away, because you know what it's like in these old palaces. So it's full of life. So what was the use of Grandi Giardini Italiani? I think I was rather like a shock for them. I turned up and told them, you know, we're in a new century. If you don't want to sell it, let's do it properly. You've got to get you've got to get your act together. You've got to work on it. You've got to spend money. You've got to invest. And the lovely thing, after 25 years, we have a publishing company, because no one wanted to publish our books, because they thought you don't sell books on gardens in Italy. Fine. We publish an awful lot of books, and we have no problem at all on selling them, because you've got to market them. Thank heavens for Amazon as well. And so the little publishing company, we got the first one of our clients to write about his property, and they've all begun to be documents, you see. So he doesn't tell the story of his life, but he tells the story of the garden. Then another thing we do is so many events in our garden, which we get youngsters coming in. So we have flower shows, which I find the most tiring experience you could probably have, because you get people coming with vans and going across the lawns and, you know, putting their pots where they shouldn't. But it's very exciting, because they're youngsters and they turn up and they like the idea of having a flower show in such fantastic settings. We also organize film shooting. I have one of my clients who said she didn't want to, she's in Lucca, and she said, no, I don't want too many people in my garden. I like it on my own. I said, fine, well, how are you going to make money? What do you like doing? We had a sort of a brainstorming. And she said, I love soap operas. Well, that put me at a bit of a feat. I thought, well, how am I going to answer that? Then I had a friend working in Rome and in California for Fox Television. And I called them. I said, well, do you ever organize, you know, films on location and things like that? I said, oh, yes, we're going to do a thing, an 18th century drama film. Would love to hire the property. Okay, so they hired the whole garden, the palace, and the outhouses for €1 million. That meant she was, you know, she then had her own seat where she could sit next to the director. She used to sit and see the soap opera being done. She knew all the actors, and they came back year after year, and all her outhouses have now become flats that have the name of the actors she's had there. So we need a little bit of imagination. But then you see, gardens are imagination. They are creativity. They are living forms of art. So I'm against making them into museums. They must be, we do a super thing every year for the last 25 years, which is an Easter egg hunt in all of our gardens for children. But it's a botanical race. Children have to recognize leaves and put them back on the trees. They don't win anything. They just get a little document saying that they're, you know, young botanics or whatever, and a nice book on trees and flowers or whatever. But we had, I think 2 years ago, over 5,000 children in one day in every garden for the botanical hunt that we have every year. Another one I would like to talk about was a telephone call. I will go quick because we're now getting to our 20 minutes, so you can ask questions, and I do not want to bore you in any way. I got a telephone call one evening very late. I'm married to a journalist, so I'm very lucky because he loves what I do. Also because I keep out of his hair, because he has to write late in the evenings. You know what journalists are like. So I had a late telephone call. I thought it was him playing a joke on me or something, a prank. And they said, I'm calling from the Vatican. We would like to know if we could be part of Grandi Giardini Italiani. So I threw the telephone down because I thought, then I noticed the number. I rang back immediately and said, sorry, the line fell down. Were you really interested in being part of Grandi Giardini Italiani? He says, yes, well, you see, the problem is, Mrs. Wade, that the Pope, Bergoglio, never goes on holiday. So that was very interesting to start with. So Castel Gandolfo, which is one of the most beautiful gardens around Rome, which you must get to see, was used by the late Pope and many popes in history as their holiday home. But he's against holidays. So what are we going to do with it? And I said, well, can we meet and talk about it? I have to walk around it. I have to do, you know, a research on what we can do with it. And he said, fine, when would you like to come? And I said, tomorrow morning. I live in Switzerland, so I drove down through the night, and I was there at Castel Gandolfo at 9 o'clock because the emotion was so gigantic. To be one of the not the first people, but very few people who got into Castel Gandolfo and see the design that was copied from Raffaello and the cryptoportico. And while I was walking around, I suddenly noticed all the gardeners turning up with our books, asking if I could sign them. And we had a cappuccino together and we talked about it. So my job is more about people than actually gardens. I don't design gardens. I don't restructure gardens. I try and get their finances on their feet. And I have the privilege of getting to know people who are so eccentric, so special, and so dedicated. But I do hope that this little part of the conversation will convey to you what is behind this scheme. So it's not an association. It is me simply working for them. And so they tell me all their secrets. They tell me all the dreams, all the things they would like to do. So if you have any questions.
Okay. Okay, so you please put your hand up or a thing, or maybe just talk. Just maybe unmute yourself and ask. Say who you are and go for it. Can I start?
Lovely.
All right. Yes, I was interested because there is this myth about the Italians who are not really gardeners. And I mean, I know that you said at the beginning that you felt that was because they don't have, we can't get in to see gardeners. But I think that generally people prefer possibly vegetable gardens to decorative gardens. What would you say to that?
So in answer to your question, the Italians aren't really gardeners. I would say the Italians are passionate about gardens, but from an aesthetic point of view. So I always make this example when I go to England. If you stop any Italian and you ask them, what period is this garden? More or less, not only the age of the garden, but in what art movement it was. Even a runner-gun of Italian will be able to tell you. And that is, we must keep that as basics. Whereas I'm of a family, my grandmother is a great gardener. She built a beautiful garden in Sri Lanka, another one in India. She was she was a bottoms up, as we say in English. She was the one who got her hands into gardening. But she didn't know really the difference between a Rococo garden and a Baroque garden. And, she knew what an arts and crafts garden was, but I don't think she knew what a medieval garden was about or a Roman garden was. So we must really deal with it with the thing that the Italians have a passion for gardens and for color and for design and for proportion, dimension. And as you know, the most famous Italian gardens weren't built by botanics. They were not built by landscape architects. They were built by Vanvitelli and Buontalenti, who organized scenery for parties. That's how it began. That's how it really began. So the big formal Italian gardens. They don't garden themselves. Okay, I have a very good answer to that. Italy up to the Second World War was 80% farmers. That's where they got that was, what was happening in Italy. After the war, so nearly everybody had a grandpa who was a farmer, or who lived on a farm, who produced wine, oil, as in Liguria, l'olivi, and things like that. After the Second World War, they all went to Torino, Milan. There was the great immigration into cities. And now 70% of the Italians live in cities, but even smaller cities like Parma, but they're not farmers anymore. And they think that gardening is heavy going. They relate it to hard work. They relate it to poverty. They're not there yet. England has had 100 years to get there. So they're getting better, but it's difficult to find any of my friends who are gardeners. And I now live in a place where you can't get there with high heels. I don't have a road. You have to walk up and I have to walk down. So that cuts off half of my social life. So they're getting better. Youngsters are getting better. Herbal gardens, kitchen gardens are much more fashionable in England and in America and Australia. It's a fad in Italy. But when they find out that it's hard work, just as much as anything else, it sort of peters out. A lot of our gardens have made it, but after 4 or 5 years, because it has high maintenance costs and they're not doing it themselves, they're then blotting them out again.
Interesting. Would anyone else like to?
Yeah, Angela, this is Nicholas Stadden. Can I ask a question?
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, Judith, how are you?
Very well, Nicholas.
You're terrific. Where are you? Where are you speaking from?
I'm speaking from Switzerland.
Huh.
My offices are in Italy, and I go over the border every day. I'm the only little car that you can see on Google that isn't coming up to work in Switzerland, but that goes down to Italy. So,
Terrific.
but I'm physically now in Switzerland. My husband is a Swiss journalist.
Oh, how interesting. So did you watch Monty Don's Gardens of Italy?
Yes, if you notice, there's a little picture of me on a boat because I organized his filming in Italy. We chose together the gardens. I did the pre-production for him. I work for 16 different production companies from Canada to Australia to China. I do a thing that is called field work. I get hold of the gardens they need. I make sure that they're well kept. And then their presenter comes over and does the nice bit. I do the dirty work.
But how cool is that? So you were in the boat with Monty when he was going around Lake Como?
That's right, yes. I don't like being on video much. No, I much prefer doing the work because, you know, I'm very vain. I've got too many wrinkles. I don't like that very much. I like doing the work that is behind the scenes, which is getting all, you know, all the things they need, getting the garden ready, getting the garden owners there on time, and doing the research work before. I love working with Canada. They have the Victory Channel is one of the finest. And I love working with a company that's called Arte, which is a French-German cultural project. And I've been working with them for at least 20 years.
Have you muddled around with, and Angela, shut me up, because I'm worried I might dominate the conversation here.
Well, let's have this question and then we'll hand over to possibly someone else.
All right. So have you done any work with Piet Oldulf at all?
No, you mean in Netherlands, in Holland?
Yes.
I forgot to tell you, I set up 3 networks. One is called Grandi Giardini Italiani, one is called Gardens of Switzerland, and one is called Great Gardens of the World, a network that is in 20 different countries from China to Holland. He's a very inspiring person. I love his work.
Yeah, terrific. He's doing a lot of, he's really started to turn up in America. And I work for a nursery company over here and do a lot of presenting to folks. And we've really started to latch on to what he's doing. And what he's doing in more so on the East Coast is very applicable to what we can do on the West Coast. So, all right, terrific. All right, Angela, I'll be quiet.
No, but do go and have a look at the Great Gardens of the World website. You'll find that Oldulf is on that, and Sunnylands is on it as well. We've got a lot of American gardens.
Terrific. I'll go hang out there.
Sorry, okay. Nicholas, can I just go back on something that you've just said? Sorry. I didn't understand your comment. So what the Piet Oldulf approach to design is more applicable on the East Coast than the West Coast? Is that what you said, or did you say otherwise?
Well, Angela, let me have a crack at it. He's very much, he's got this terrific movement going, which is a naturalistic, some people have got different terms, but it's a real naturalistic way to garden. He's really heavy into perennials, heavy into grasses, with strategically placed shrubs and small trees.
But is that compatible with your Californian climate? That's the question.
Well, so yes, it is. Now people will argue that, you know, everyone like.
I would argue that. So Nicholas, here's a public invitation to you. Why don't you come on in June and let's talk about it. Let's have a meeting on that, because I think that
on Piet Oldulf.
Well, no, on naturalistic planting design in Mediterranean climates. I want to get to my speaker for tonight now, because that's, you know, we've gone on to an aside, but it's great to meet you. Thank you for your input, and we'll follow up definitely. Okay. Anybody else like to have Yvonne would like a question?
Christine Daniels from France. I wanted to ask Judith if she has connections from the gardens in France.
Sorry, I can't hear this question.
Oh, I wanted to ask if you had connections with any gardens in France.
In France?
Yes.
Yes, thanks. Thank you, Christine. Yes, we work with les plus beaux jardins de France. So we work with 20 gardens in France that are very beautiful, including Château de la Bataille, which is this incredible creation of a French designer, an antiquaire, and also with Vaux-le-Vicomte, which is one of my favorite families to work with. He unfortunately died last winter, but I was with dinner with him some time before. So as you can imagine, I travel quite a lot, and I work with this small association, and we try to promote them in Italy. You know, we exchange favors.
Could you give me the association name again?
Sorry?
Yes, the name of the association. I didn't catch.
Yes, it's on my website.
Okay.
And it's, my pronunciation is not very good, Christine, Les plus beaux jardins de France.
Oui.
Sorry for my French.
Thank you.
Willem Jan has his hand raised. Willem Jan, go ahead. Hi. You're on mute, darling. Can't hear you. Okay, you're still mute. Unmute. I'm sorry, we can't hear you. Okay, I'll ask Merit, Sophia. Go ahead. Hello, Merit.
Hi, nice to meet you. It's my first meeting with the Mediterranean Garden Society. So actually, I'm sitting at home in Switzerland, and I would be very much interested in getting some detailed information about the Society of the Big Gardens in Switzerland. Yes. This is my first question. And the second question is, we also are creating now a new garden in Sicily. We have one in Greece, and now we are creating a new garden in Sicily. So if our great speaker could recommend me a person that I could get in contact in Sicily to have an exchange or on plants, that would be just a favorite or just perfect for the atmosphere and the climate in Sicily, in the
what part of okay, so thank you very much for the question, Merit, and good luck with your new garden. Sicily, of course, for the Mediterranean Society, it should be your second home, shouldn't it? Yes. And I'm sure you often go there. Do let me go. I don't have a traveling agency, okay? So just ring up as friends, and I'll tell all the gardeners to set up something special for you. I love Sicily. I often go. Are you going to be near Palermo, Catania, Ragusa, or Siracusa? Which part of Sicily?
We are very close to Milazzo, so it's in between Messina and Cefalù. Okay. It's on the northeast coast.
So your contact in Sicily is Radice Pura. It's okay. Mario Faro. You can. I can send the address to Angela. Okay?
It's on our website. We have a section. We have a section on plants and nurseries and gardens that we recommend on the Italian website, and you can find it there, but you can also find it obviously through.
Yep. So you know it already, Angela.
Thank you so much. Perfect.
They're very nice people. To know about the Swiss gardens, I didn't call them the Great Gardens of Switzerland because Switzerland is small. It has a different culture. They don't like things that are flamboyant or over the top as I am. So it's just called Gardens of Switzerland. And on my website, Grandi Giardini Italiani, you will, or just digit Gardens of Switzerland. It's a very small network. But I did it because I live in Switzerland. And I thought, you know, I just want to sit pretty. I wanted to do something in Switzerland. So I'd love to develop it more, because they're the most marvelous gardens in Switzerland, obviously not with Mediterranean plants, okay? No. So Sicily is one of the finest places to build a garden. And Merit, with Angela, if you want to be introduced to some of my garden owners, they're some of the friendliest people. You must meet Princess Borghese, because she was one of the first people to bring to Sicily bioagriculture. So I can't say that in English. Biological agriculture. So she has the biggest orange farm in it, orchard in Italy. She's very international, speaks perfect English, great fun, written a super book. And when you turn up, she gives you an ice cream made out of our oranges. Very simple.
Sounds wonderful.
Found in her, you know, but she's very old, but I'd love you to meet her, because it's good that you're planting a garden. But I think as it will be a thing you're doing, you know, it's nice to meet other gardeners, you know, people who have gardens also, you know, just to exchange things with them, have a chit chat.
Yeah, I just had a call from her daughter, actually, who's doing a lot of work in the garden for Mickey. So they're interested in promoting it and putting it on the map. So that was,
yes,
because obviously Mickey has her age.
There are all sorts of gardens in the Catania area that belongs to youngsters.
Okay, so I'm going to just...
Thank you so much.
Willem Dan, can you have another go now?
Is it working now?
Yes.
All right. Good evening, Mrs. Wade. Your introduction gave me the feeling that your role is more or less like an organizational consultant or a marketeer or maybe even a psychologist, which almost gives me the feeling that I'm forgetting that you bring together a great collection of Italian gardens. Are there any selection criteria you have entering your...
Yes, so I do have a criteria that I made up of my own. So it isn't something academic. What I'm doing it, my job is I'm doing it for the public, okay? So the garden must be of historical interest, botanical interest, and artistic interest. Sometimes all three. It must be worth the while that people drive 100 miles to see it. Not just any nice garden. It's got to be worth the trip.
Yeah, and how do you measure that? Because those are beautiful. How do you measure those criteria? What makes it a historical or a botanical garden?
Historically, it's quite easy. Historically, it's quite easy. You know, if it represents a part,
it should be
because you
old.
see, a lot of gardens have been, it's a mishmash. You know, they're not all historically pure. So I like the idea that you could actually pick on a garden, go and see it and say, okay, I've had an experience with a 16th century garden or whatever. And then go and see a landscape garden and go and see something different. Or go and see something in the north that has certain types of plants and go to the south and see others. Or go to a lake or go up a hill and see different types of plants. Well, we have experts who help us. And I'm very lucky because nearly all the people in the cultural world never get paid. So I have the best possible consultants possible, you know, because we actually pay them for their consultancy. So it's not that I know everything, is if I don't know something about a particular period, I'll call a university and I have my consultant, or for instance on plants, I work with the Orto Botanico di Padova, which is the oldest botanical garden in the world. It is run by a university, and I've only put them in difficulty once, and they opened a research, you know, and sent down 2 students, and we got it right. So that's what we do. And then the most difficult one is they have to be sure they want to open it to the public. And that's not easy because you must have that mentality. Some people live in their places, you know, and they don't like the idea of people stumping up and down. And then the last one, which is the most difficult of all, which is for selecting gardens, it must be well kept. I'm not getting people to go all the way over the world to see something that is badly kept. So what I try and say, you know, we go around the world promoting Grandi Giardini Italiani. I've been doing it for 25 years. I've been to Brazil, I've been all over the place. And the first question is always, oh, but the Italians don't keep their gardens very well. So I had to fight against that. Willem. I had to make sure that we were promoting what we deliver and say, okay, get on a flight from Buenos Aires, come and see us, and the garden will be beautifully kept. They're not all up to standard, but the fact that they are in a group and they have to compare one with another is a very good, you know, way of getting them all winded up and getting their job done.
It's a stimulation for the others, you mean?
I know I must sound a very rude person because I only do marketing and things like that, but it's what they needed, because they were full of architects, they were full of people giving them advice, but they weren't getting their act together. The only thing I could give them was their financial support. But if I give them the financial support, it must be invested in the gardens. As soon as I see that they're investing it in, you know, the third Ferrari or the fourth horse or whatever it is, they're locked out of the system, because this is a system that every penny must go into gardeners, plants, expertise. We're now starting up all sorts of beautiful research work for them. So, but you can't do everything, Willem. So I just did a little part of the job. I'm not saying I did everything. I just did a thing that started, you know, getting them on their feet again. And now next year it'll be 25 years. We'll have a beautiful book by a famous publisher. We're going to have a film as well. And I don't believe I've done everything. I just did my bit. You know, us Brits, we're not afraid of just doing something, you know, for society. I've never made any money out of it. Everything I invest is reinvested, because every time I get a little bit of money, I then notice a girl coming in the door with eyes, you know, just coming out of university looking for a job, and, you know, and so I invest a lot in personnel.
Have you ever, can you tell us a story where you actually said no?
Oh, yes. Even last week, because a lot of hotels now want to be on my scheme, but then you see they're not open to the public, because we have quite a good reputation. Our logo is beginning to be well done. We get 8.5 million visitors a year. So there's the hotel business that would like to, you know, chip in on this thing. Nothing against it. I mean, we have 4 hotels in our group, but they do have splendid gardens. But you see, gardens, what happens with the hotels is that then they're not always open to the public. A great success story has been with banks, because Anna Maria will probably know, in Italy, there's Fondazione Bancaria. There are so many of them, and they have so many beautiful palaces and a lot of gardens, but they're not open to the public. So I've been going to see them one after the other, and I said to them, well, why aren't you opening it to the public? You only use it once a year because, you know, they have a meeting or something. And the reaction is always the same. We never thought about it before. So we're now opening up gardens. You can't imagine how well kept they are. I think they don't use manure. They use directly banknotes. They're the best kept gardens in Italy, belong to banks.
Interesting. Judith, would you like to go? Have you got another chapter for us, or are you happy to answer questions?
It was very nice meeting you. Thank you very much, Angela. I mean, I'm not advertising anything. I was just trying to exchange. I'm just a simple person who has what they call has financed her own idea. I don't get money from anybody, except I must say I'm very proud to have an important sponsor who's a friend, who dedicated a watch to my work, who's called Nick Hayek of Swatch Group. But it isn't a deal. It's just he went mad about our gardens, but I don't get any help from the state. I don't have an association, so no one pays me a fee. It is my garden owners that if I'm useful for them, then I can finance my dream, which is bread and roses too, which, as the Americans will know, is a slogan of Women's Lib in America, which we want equal rights. They wanted equal rights and equal pay. And I use this slogan, bread and roses too. So I've even had a rose dedicated to my job, which is called the red rose, the Grandi Giardini red rose. It has a beautiful perfume. And but I think it can be a world of beauty, but where a lot of people can work in as well. I've got nothing against that. I must be very bourgeois. I think it is so important that we get these gardens full of people working and doing things and making projects. Gardens are not made only out of flowers, but about man who puts the flowers in. So thank you very much for all your time. And I just wanted to share my story with you. If any of you want to write to me, Angela will give you my email. And if any of you come my way, we're in Como. I travel a lot, so just tell me in advance. I would love to have you in for a glass of wine in my beautiful offices. We can go along Lake Como. Do look after yourself, everybody. We'll all come out of it in the end and we will meet. Okay?
Thank you.
Bye.
Julia. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Angela. Look after yourself.
Thank
Yes,
you.
thanks. That was great. Thank you.
Very interesting.